there's two I really want to highlight. I mean, there's several, but I was living and working on a farm in the upper Amazon, and I was actually walking through the jungle one day with a machete in my hand to paint this picture for you. And I was by myself. I was actually just gonna go cut down some bananas to bring back to the house. And this giant, like rugby football sized thing fell out of a tree in front of me. It didn't hit me, but if I'd been walking 5 seconds in front of it, it probably would have hit me. Hit the ground and rolled down this hill and stopped against a tree. And I'm like, what the heck is this thing? And I walk up to it, and it looks like this big, kind of like slightly furry green dragon egg. And it has like all these like, interesting patterns. And it's like, it's as big as a rugby ball, right? And everything in the Amazon's trying to kill you. Like literally everything is trying to kill you. Spikes, snakes, bugs, you name it, plants. And so I'm like poking this thing like what is this thing gonna like your spider's gonna pop out of this or something? And I ended up being like, okay, I don't think this thing's gonna try to kill me. So I'm kind of like touching it, and I'm like, all right, I think we're gonna be okay. So I pick it up and I bring it back to the family I was staying with, and I was like, okay, it's this though. Like, what is this? And they're like, oh, this is Macombo. Like, you don't know what this is? And it turns out it's this incredible rainforest superfruit, and inside of it are these beans, so Macombo beans. And we ended up like cutting open the pod with a machete, and you actually peel this kind of like flesh off the beans, and inside are these incredibly nutritious beans. And that was how I discovered Macombo.
Go there! Boom! No one does anything with the fruit, right?
So they make in Brazil.
Yeah.
They make this stuff called cachoeira.
Okay.
Which is like they press the juice out of it, and it's like one of the most nectary, delicious things you've ever had in your life. It's incredibly sweet.
Got it.
And sometimes they'll like heat it and kind of boil it, and so a little bit of sugars like caramelize.
So cashews are like, it's a fruit, and the cashew is actually
inside the fruit.
No, it's on top of the fruit. It's like
it hangs off.
What would you call it? Oh, it hangs off the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it considered? It's
I mean,
it's a nut with a fruit, basically.
So do you guys do anything with the fruit?
That's what we were just asking. So in Brazil they do something, but
people in nowhere. I mean,
nowhere else,
in other places, yeah. But it's kind of like something that gets used locally rather than like
shipped out,
commercialized. Although sometimes in Brazil you can find like.
But cashews are poisonous until roasted.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You have to roast them to get up. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So anyway,
pretty cool.
All right, should we get started? I don't even know where this podcast is going to go, but I'm going to let you introduce yourself. And then, because we've been talking for about 2 hours already, and we haven't recorded a single thing. So you go ahead and start, and then we'll take it from there.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Dan. My name's Tucker Garrison. I'm the co-founder of Imlak'esh Organics, and that's a big part of my life. But I'm a lover of the ocean, a surfer, a permaculture designer, a former farmer, and have a love of world traveling. And I think all those things together led me down the road to starting a superfood company that now we source from all over the world and work with about 3,000 small family farms.
It's amazing. So and I'll give everyone a little background because the whole way we connected is just crazy.
Yeah.
So I don't even know where we would start. I guess the first point would be I had somehow got in touch with your company. I don't even know how. Do we even know how?
We have great SEO.
No, I remember how now. Expo West.
Oh, yeah.
I saw you guys at Expo West about a year and a half ago.
Which, for those of you that don't know, is a big natural product show.
And I was still in, obviously, sourcing for my supplement companies, different nutrients from around the world, and working on trying to find and close the gap and show visibility on where we were sourcing. And I came across you guys, and I think it was Emma at the booth. Or would it have been someone else?
Probably Emma, yeah.
It was probably Emma at the booth. And I had got in touch, and there was a handful of raw material suppliers I was reaching out to. Got in touch with Emma at your company, and this is a year ago now.
Yeah.
Some of those projects kind of got derailed on my end, and then fast forward, I'm swimming with this guy named Brian Mineo, we go to Alcatraz to swim in the ocean, or to swim from Alcatraz in. And when we get in, he comes out with this band on his ankle. And I'm like, what are you wearing? And he's like, it's a shark band. You didn't have one? And then so we got in touch with your brother, who was just on the last episode 18? 18. And he's in this office, and we're rapping about how he created shark bands. And then he's like, oh, tell me about your product lines. I want to know, a little bit more about it. Give him the background. He's like, you really need to talk to my brother, who happens to own a company that I was in talks with about sourcing materials from a year ago. So very small world.
I love it. I love it when you live your passions, how all these people pop out of the woodwork and an amazing synchronicity happens in your life.
When you actually when I actually say that out loud, it just seems ridiculous. So,
yeah, but that's the way the world works. When you're living your passion, living your dreams, it's really fun.
So you run a superfood company that is, I'll let you dig into it because you're doing pretty amazing things. But I kind of want to get into what led you to this point first. So what if just like we drew the lines to how we connected,
yeah, absolutely.
How would you draw that kind of origin story about how you ended up where you are right now?
Sure, yeah. And we could, probably just tell a story arc for the next hour that took me from being a teenager to starting the company, but we'll fast forward and try to do it quickly. I had the pleasure of getting to grow up in the South. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, and was definitely a troublemaking teenager, and done my fair share of bourbon swilling and cigarette smoking and pork rib eating. And I kind of grew up, and it was this really interesting mix where I always felt super out of place in the South because I had all these, kind of wild ideas, and I was really interested in, a lot of things that people in the South just generally don't really think about. And I was always I felt like this sense of inner health and well-being in me, but I didn't realize until much later that I was incredibly sensitive to preservatives and artificial colorants. And so I grew up and I had allergy and asthma, and I was on prescription medication for those two things. And I basically just had this huge life transformation through food when I moved to California, and pretty quickly became vegetarian. And as I just kept going further and further down this road, I started feeling amazing, right? And I used to weigh probably 35 pounds more than I do now. And I never tried to be oh, well, I'm going to lose weight. I just said I want to be the healthiest, best version of myself I can possibly be, and have that come from inside of me. And then this kind of whole transformation and process of a huge detox basically happened. And it was interesting. There was a big fire happening in Santa Barbara, and I'd met this couple that had been raw vegan for 9 years, which this is back in 2008 or 9. And they stayed at my house for 3 or 4 days, and they were making these chocolate drinks with raw cacao, and putting goji berries on stuff, and maca powder, and spirulina. So those were really the first 4 superfoods I was introduced to. And I was like, wow, this stuff makes me feel really good. And about a month before my 21st birthday, I quit drinking alcohol for a month, just as let's just see how this goes. And a month later, I felt the best I'd ever felt in my entire life. And it all kind of started, I was living in Isla Vista, which if any of you listening know Isla Vista, it's 30,000 college kids living in a square mile on the beach, and it's a party scene. And when I quit drinking, I still wanted to be out until 2 a.m, partying, have a great time with my friends. And so I started figuring out how can I get high and energized and kind of altered, if you will, without drinking. And so I started making these drinks that were loaded with maca powder, spirulina, and I would use raw honey and blue-green algae, those other things. And I would walk around with a glass mason jar, and the police would stop me all the time, thinking I had an open container. And I'd be like, oh, do you guys want some? And it was this super green drink, but I would end up coming home at 2 o'clock in the morning, still so energized and just clear, that I would go for a couple mile run on the beach at 2 a.m. just to chill out enough to be able to go to sleep. And so, that journey kind of led me to my own sense of health and wellness and energy, and just being wow, I can feel this good. And that's kind of how it all started.
That's crazy. Yeah. All right. So Santa Barbara, right. That's where I live.
Yep, in Santa Barbara.
Yep. And then, so you go from there. What happens are you doing anything from a business standpoint in college, or is it when you graduate that starts happening?
Yeah, so I graduated and it was kind of like, well, I just need to feed the habit basically. And so I started buying like 10 pounds of, cacao and 10 pounds of maca from places domestically, and was basically selling it to my friends for a little bit above cost. And then I would basically get to eat all the foods for free. And I had this just incredible feeling of having all these people in my life that I really cared about that were eating these amazing foods and getting all this incredible feedback. And it was like that thing of like, oh, like I'm like on the right track with this, but this is like super renegade. I mean, it was literally like similar to selling drugs out of your house or something, where it's like someone comes over and they like, you like put a bag on a scale and you like weigh out a bunch of white powder, it just happens to be maca powder or cacao or whatever it is, but it was that renegade, it was just, and it was only for like, maybe like 9 months. And this is kind of where the story really heats up, but for years before that, I had this calling to go to Peru, and I didn't know why, right? It was like my heart was like pulling me down there, and I couldn't resist it. And so after about 3 years of listening to this voice, I said, all right, I have to go. So I ended up breaking up with my partner, who I loved, quitting my job, which I loved, and moving out of my house and my community, which I loved, and just like threw myself to the wind on a one-way ticket and a backpack to Peru and said, I don't know if I'm ever coming back. And I ended up living in the Amazon rainforest. I was there for about a year, but I ended up living in the Amazon with no running water and electricity, studying plant medicine and being in the jungle, and actually discovered some of the most unique and novel foods we have today. And, that journey of like backpacking around the country and sleeping in hammocks on people's porches and working on their farms, because my background's in organic agriculture and education, really led to like the foundation, the seeds of the supply chain that we have today. And obviously it's evolved over the last 6-7 years, but that is still the seed of what we do, right? Which is, it's all about connecting and building this bridge between small scale farmers, indigenous native people, women owned businesses and farms in Peru and Ecuador and Thailand and other places around the world, and really connecting ethical, direct trade, organic foods to people here in the US that really care about what they're putting in their body and how their purchasing decisions affect the people that are growing these foods.
So we'll get into that in a second,
Yeah.
But the moment where you decided just to go to Peru, because I get asked this all the time about travel too.
Yeah.
And this is more than just traveling.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that just want to leave and just get out.
Sure.
And money's always a thing. Did you have money before you left, or did you just decide to go? And
so
did you save up at all, or?
I was living on a farm in a little 10 by 10 like house with a solar panel, and was saving as much money as I could, like living as cheaply as I possibly could. And I think I saved up like $4,000 or something like that.
Pretty aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah. And but when I was traveling through Latin America, I was living on like $10 a day or less, and really, putting my time and energy into learning and being of service at, working on people's farms and working on their land. And, that really allows, one, I think, this deep level of connection to people in place. And I'm a highly proficient Spanish speaker, or I became that over the course of that trip. And so, yeah, I mean, it's always a challenge to just like throw your life to the wind, and finances are a big part of it, but it's a big question of like, well, do you want to stay in like hotels, or are you cool with sleeping in a hammock on someone's porch? And I was cool with that.
And then how did you start the process of working on farms? Did you just go and then just start meeting people, shaking hands and making connections, or did you have anything set up before you went down?
Yeah, man, all I can say is that if you just, if you're intuitive and you say yes to the right opportunities, I mean, literally like meet someone at a bus stop. It's like, hey, my family grows cacao, out in the jungle. Like, do you want to come stay with my family? And like 12 hours down a long dirt road later, you're, staying in like, this amazing, hut basically of, a multi-generational family, and they've got bananas and cacao and mangoes and coffee and all these incredible things growing. And, I definitely live my life believing that almost everyone on earth has good intentions and a kind heart. And obviously you got to look out and take care of yourself where you can. But, I wish I had some good answer formula for you, but it was a pretty it was pretty incredible to see how all of that unfolded. And when I think back on it, I'm like, how did I end up from like the lowland of the jungle in the Amazon to 15,000 feet up in the mountains, you know, staying with all these families and working on land and just kind of connecting from farm to co-op to processor, like all the way through this whole chain. But yeah.
Got it. Did you focus in when you went down there? Was your focus to come out with, was it knowledge? Was it a product? Was it just the experience? What was the game plan when you went down?
So it's a really good question. All I can say is that I needed to go, and I didn't know why. And, you know, thinking back now, so, you know, the partner at the time I broke up with is the co-founder of Imlak'esh. His name's Phil Matt Richardson. And I called him from Peru before I came home, and I said, hey, do you want to start a superfoods company? And we actually got back together. So we're a founder, you know, co-founder couple run company. We're LGBT certified business. And my father is the third co-founder of the business. He's the best dad ever, and, you know, has made my brother and I's dreams come true and supported us in everything we've done. But, you know, to come back to your question, I think it was just like, I have to go do this thing, and I don't know why. And it was an idea I had in the back of my mind, right? And because my background was kind of in food and agriculture, and a lot more so in kind of local food, I was running a 40-acre organic avocado ranch. I was deeply connected to the question of where does our food come from and what are the stories behind it. And I think one of the most disruptive things, being the theme of this podcast, that we've done is that we're really working to grow the idea of place-based food, right? So everybody is, you know, hip to kind of the local food trend of let's go to a farmer's market and let's make sure I know my farmer, where my food's coming from. But I don't see people likely to stop eating chocolate tomorrow or stop drinking coffee tomorrow. And so to me, it's like, where are those foods coming from? This is place-based food. They come from a place, they come from somewhere. People grow them, and there is land that's either being stewarded and taken care of, or it's being destroyed in the process. And so how are we connecting people's purchasing choices and giving them the option to purchase something that's ethically sourced, that's creating, you know, we work in a regenerative business model, which is a huge, you know, element of our work is around regeneration, both ecologically and socially in our work. And so for me, it's like, how do we connect place-based food? And that's a huge disruption in the food trend, right? In the food world, because people don't know where their food comes from.
Yeah.
And businesses oftentimes hide the sources of where their products come from because they don't want people to know all the things that are going on.
Yeah. And like you said, there's a movement for local or slow, right? Mm-hmm. But there's so much more out there that you can't get locally. Right. Yeah. Climate, whatever, you know, the reason is, that are, you know, nutrients that you can benefit from. So
absolutely.
So after you were down in Peru for how long?
I was there for about 7 months, but I was there back and forth. I was home for a month, back for 2 months, home for a month, back for 3 months over the course of, you know, the next year. And I mean, I'm there a lot.
Okay. Is that where most of your nutrients are coming from?
So that was actually where we started sourcing, was from Peru.
Okay.
The initial different functional foods and superfoods that we brought in, and all these interesting keto and paleo and plant-based foods. And this was, you know, back in 2012, 2013 when we started. And since then we've expanded. We now work pretty heavily in Ecuador. I work in Chile, Thailand, and Laos are the main countries. We work in Canada as well. So,
all right.
Yeah.
And then when did Imlak'esh come about? When did you said you called your partner, said you want to start a superfood company. Yeah. How did the name happen? How did that whole process?
Yeah. So Imlak'esh is, it's Quiche Maya, which is an indigenous language from the people of Guatemala. And it means within you another me, within me another you, or this idea that we're all connected. So that's really the ethos with which we run the brand, is that we can only do well by ourselves by doing well by all others, right? And so that's like how we carry ourselves into our work, is how can we steward the land, the people, all the farming communities we work with, all the way through, you know, the end customer and the person that's choosing to support this, all these different products, support the company, and thus support all these people. So it's really the foundation. And I actually, I've had the great privilege in my life of getting to sit at the feet of a number of indigenous nations and learn from the old ways. So this trip to Peru wasn't the first of my journeys. I had spent a lot of time living with the A'ich, which are the keepers of the Mayan calendar, and they actually gifted me the name Imlak'esh.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's how it all started.
Well, this total side note.
Yeah.
The Mayan calendar.
Yeah.
Did anything? What was the thought process from those people about when? Because the calendar ended, right? Or it.
We would need a long time to talk about that.
Okay.
To answer your question briefly,
yeah.
I was living in Guatemala in 2009.
Okay.
Because of my fascination with the Mayan calendar, I think so many people at that time, but they were not in this overwhelming. We're not in this majority doomsday, the world is ending mentality, right?
Okay.
They understand that we were in their belief, we came into the beginning or the end of a new age, new cycle.
Got it.
Right. And again, we could go way down that road.
I told you my curiosity kind of comes in at different points.
Sure.
So you're in Peru, you're starting a superfood company. What are the first superfoods you decide to launch?
Yeah, great question. So, we started.
And why?
Yeah. There's two I really want to highlight. I mean, there's several, but I was living and working on a farm in the upper Amazon, and I was actually walking through the jungle one day with a machete in my hand to paint this picture for you. And I was by myself. I was actually just gonna go cut down some bananas to bring back to the house. And this giant rugby football sized thing fell out of a tree in front of me. It didn't hit me, but if I'd been walking 5 seconds in front of it, it probably would have hit me. Hit the ground and rolled down this hill and stopped against a tree. And I'm like, what the heck is this thing? And I walk up to it, and it looks like this big kind of slightly furry green dragon egg, and it has all these interesting patterns, and it's it's as big as a rugby ball, right? And everything in the Amazon's trying to kill you. Literally everything is trying to kill you. Spikes, snakes, bugs, you name it, plants. And so I'm poking this thing what is this thing gonna a spider's gonna pop out of this or something? And I ended up being okay, I don't think this thing's gonna try to kill me. So I'm kind of touching it, and I'm all right, I think we're gonna be okay. So I pick it up and I bring it back to the family I was staying with, and I was like, ¿Qué es esto? What is this? And they're like, oh, this is macambo. You don't know what this is? And it turns out it's this incredible rainforest superfruit, and inside of it are these beans, so macambo beans. And we ended up cutting open the pod with a machete, and you actually peel this kind of flesh off the beans, and inside are these incredibly nutritious beans. And that was how I discovered macambo. They're about 30% fiber, 20% protein, and they're super good for neurological and brain health. Really high in omega-9. Incredible keto food because they're really, really high in fiber and fat. And I found out that nobody else in the world had ever done anything with them. And so we basically pioneered the supply chain for macambo. And I think the reason is probably because no one else would be crazy enough to try. And we, I think one of the stories of Imlak'esh is, we didn't know how hard it was, so we just did it. Which I think a lot of entrepreneurs have that experience of
if you knew, you would never have done it.
Yeah. We were naive enough and didn't have any
totally
real
irrational
mentors to be maybe you should do this a different way. So you just do it and just send it and make it happen. So now fast forward, it's almost 8 years since that moment, but we now work with 800 native and indigenous people in the Peruvian Amazon, and they literally wild harvest the seed out of the rainforest. So it's a big wild harvesting project, and we think it's supporting the conservation and regeneration of about 10,000 acres of rainforest, and primarily work with women's collectives in the Amazon that do all the collection and the processing and harvesting. So it's a huge source of sustainable economic livelihood for those communities.
Is that still break down to giving people a reason to sustain the Amazon the way it is instead of ripping out a section, planting what they want, right?
It's a really important question, around regeneration or regenerative agriculture, right? Is that the essence of the Amazon is that it wants to be this biodiverse, rich place that's thriving with life. And so, so often what happens in the Amazon, which is so sad, is that people just clear cut or slash and burn areas of the rainforest, and then they'll plant, even if they'll plant cacao, or oftentimes it's palm, unfortunately. Right. And so what we're doing is actually creating, this model, market-driven restoration, right? Is that we're incentivizing people to keep the rainforest where it is, and that they're actually able to generate a higher income out of keeping it in place, and that they're actually stewarding the land and keeping poachers, miners, loggers out of those regions by having an active presence there, and then being able to wild harvest.
And I think this is important because for people who don't know, because I had my first experience with the rainforest, I want to say 2008. I think it was 2008. I went to Brazil and went to the Pantanella, and you hear growing up, even in the 90s, the rainforest is dying. The rainforest is getting removed, right? Yeah. It never clicks until you actually show up. Yeah. And I just remember going into the Pantanella, which is supposedly one of the most biodiverse areas, right? Yeah. In the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And driving for hours through just cattle fields of just clear cut grassland. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was beautiful. All of it. Mm-hmm. And you're driving and driving and driving. And then we get to an area where the government had offered farmers money to keep, if they open it up to kind of ecotourism, to keep the rainforest as is. And you get to actually see this line drawn of like, well, this is the rainforest. Yeah. And it used to go all the way back, but it's cleared. Like it still blows my mind how much land has been cleared out.
Oh, it's
in the options are, and I think it's smart, like provide commerce for people, whether it's ecotourism or what you're doing, but give them a reason outside of, you have to sustain it just to sustain it, because the world depends on it. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think I've ever found a way to communicate how devastating some of those areas are. And even like Borneo, like Borneo, I remember going through thinking like, oh, this is going to be the most magical, unbelievable, like dense place, and just the logging and everything is crazy.
Yeah. Well, if I could speak to that for a minute, it is, I mean, it's heartbreaking to see what we've done. And I had the great privilege of getting to go and stay with an indigenous community way out in the Amazon, and you basically have to take a military flight over the jungle that runs like 2 days a week, maybe, kind of, sort of, and to get to the outpost to then go into this community. So it's incredibly remote, and I was invited to go because of all the work we've been doing for years in the rainforest, and was looking and continue to look at partnering with this community to do some market-driven restoration models and get ahead of the deforestation that's happening. And I'd seen a lot of deforestation in my time in the Amazon, and like one Brazil nut tree sitting in the middle of a cattle field because it had an economic value, right? And I flew for almost an hour and a half over a continuous canopy of old growth rainforest, and it was right as the sun was setting, and there's these like 300-400-year-old spires of these incredible trees just poking out of this canopy as far as the eye can see. And it was right at that point in the life where the rainforest was actually respirating, right? You could see water pouring out of the rainforest and actually creating the clouds and the climate and the oxygen that makes this planet live and breathe and grow. And, I literally started crying in that moment because I realized what we had done, like what we have done in order to, create what we've created as human beings in the world. And what I also realized is that there is enough of a reserve of these incredibly biodiverse, incredibly vibrant areas left, that if we can create positive shifts in the way that we go about interacting as humans, and really create, rather than creating degenerative models, which we've gotten incredibly good at creating degenerative models of doing things, that if we can create shifts in our consciousness and shifts in the way that we interact in business, then we can actually regenerate these places and have market-driven restoration models that are stewarding these places and actually generating more economic value than they are by being clear-cut. And, to then end up deep in the rainforest with people that, that still remember the old ways and, can taste the bitterness in plants and actually, carry themselves in an entirely different way. You know, we're losing cultural diversity at an alarming rate as well. And you know, one of the themes you may hear me, you know, riff on many times in this podcast is that there's a really deep connection between biodiversity and cultural diversity. And, you know, we're careening towards a world where we're going to end up in, you know, in parking lots full of corporate, you know, Panda Express and Targets, and kind of what I call nowhere America, you know, or
could be anywhere.
Anywhere,
yeah.
right?
I could, yeah, it's, yeah.
Versus ending up in this kind of like vibrant, diverse, interesting, inclusive world where people of all races, colors, ethnicities are stewarding the heritage of the foods that they've grown and the fabrics and the song and the dance that they all bring together, right? And I mean, that's part of that larger picture. And so, you know, I made a decision in kind of like a pact that my work was to do this around food and actually steward really interesting, unique heritage and heirloom foods and bring them to a place where we were making sure that we were increasing the biodiversity of the places they grew, and also to just make sure that they survived, right? So that's a big part of our work.
So the first superfood was, what was it called again? The
Macombo.
The Macombo.
Yeah.
And the reason was just because no one had done it, right? And that was the main reason. What else did you guys launch?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, with Macombo, I think it was just fascinating because no one had done it, and we really wanted to bring it to the world, but striving for in all of our work, and we have a lot of work to do to get there with everything. We are by no means
we've been talking about it a lot.
Yeah.
So I guess this is a good point to stop on.
You know, if someone's listening and they're thinking, like, obviously everyone talks about superfoods, right? And I don't know if acai is like not the first, but like it was a mainstream movement, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And important, but if people listening, like, why superfoods? Why should they look to include those in their diet? They're obviously going to be more expensive because they're coming from, you know, places around the world.
Yeah.
So what is the importance of, you know, if you're talking to someone who's just, you know, every day has a regular diet, tries to cook when they can, why incorporate superfoods into their diet?
Absolutely. You know, one of the big things is that the modern diet is actually really deficient in a lot of macronutrients and micronutrients that we need, right? I mean, you know, especially in healthy fats and in a lot of vitamins and minerals that we really need, and that you can experience that sense of well-being and having vibrant nutrition and having the right amount of nutrients coming into your body. I mean, to me, it's like it increases the potential of you to do all the things that you're trying to do, right? Increasing energy levels, reducing fatigue. You know, I talk a lot about, you know, kind of like hormone balancing in the adrenal system, right? Because so many people, we all live in a really, really stressed environment and stressed world.
Yep.
And, you know, and we also, the demands on our lives, you know, mean that we're responsible for doing things that I think human beings have never before on the planet had to deal with, right? And so being able to manage your own stress levels and your own stressors and really reduce your stress level and have higher energy, have greater mental acuity, and, you know, and just kind of increasing the potential. That's really what superfoods are all about for me. And then there's also that element with certain superfoods where they can actually really detoxify the body and kind of, you know, clean the body, which is a big part of what I experience with like spirulina and even 100%, you know, cacao, chocolate, and maca and things like that, where they're really actually helping the body to kind of right imbalances. And I can only say, you know, from my own experience and from getting to talk to thousands of people, that people have some pretty transformative experiences of treating food as medicine and eating in that way, right?
Yeah. So when you look at how you started this and then started launching more superfoods, when was the moment that clicked of like, oh, we've got something here? Like, I want to keep doing this.
Yeah, sure. So we
instead of just living in the jungle and, you know, harvesting,
absolutely,
you know, things yourself.
You know, as a reluctant capitalist, I realized at some point that I truly do believe that business, when done in the right way, has the potential to be the most impactful way we can create positive change on the planet. And so I made a decision, you know, and Phil Matt and I made a decision to kind of walk into that and be like, all right, we're going to do this. You know, we're going to do retail. We're going to do food service. We're going to sell bulk ingredients, and really try to tell stories and offer products that give people hope and transformation and show people that you can do really good things with business. And we have a lot of really great mentors, right? I mean, I'm lucky enough to know the founders of Guayaquil, the mate company, and Ryan, who runs Samazon, who brought acai to America, and Numi Tea. You know, these are kind of like the people that created the natural products industry and created some of the early models of doing business the right way. But for me, it kind of was that spark in the early days where like we literally started this company like so renegade, out of our own house, and then ended up with our first warehouse was 10 by 10 square feet. So if you guys don't know, that's probably like the size of your bathroom. It's exactly the size of the room we're in now. We actually certified that facility organic. It was the smallest certified organic facility, I believe, in the entire country that had ever been certified. That's how committed we were to organics and what we were doing. And we started with like 10 grand. We started with nothing and then 10 grand and just bootstrapped it. And so we started doing a lot of like local markets, and people were just, you know, lit up by these different flavors. And, you know, one of the things we really try to do is make plant-based food delightful, because people that are interested in eating less meat, they're like, well, what am I going to eat? And it's like, well, we have all these super nutrient dense, high protein, paleo, keto foods that people are like, wow, this is like really good. I can put, you know, this on my salad instead of chicken. And so just watching people kind of light up, and we'd sell more dollars at a market than any of the other booths. And so we were like, all right, I think we're on to something. And then
how raw was the packaging and everything at this point? Was it pretty... There's a line I love that is like, if you're not embarrassed of your first product, then you didn't do it right. Basically, like, because you would have never got started.
Yeah.
So are you embarrassed of your first, or is it kind of part of that? How you started.
I'm glad you asked about packaging, because there's a great story with our brand for those that, you know, I know we're on audio, but if you check out the video, there's a couple of our glass jars of our superfoods. So we actually launched 24 products in the first 6 months that we were in business. Some of them were different sizes, but it was classically one of those things of like, we didn't know how hard it was, so we just did it. You know, a lot of like watching the sun come up through the windows as you're still working on stuff in the early days. So we made a decision early on, and I mean like a couple months into the business, when we were developing the retail line of products, that we weren't going to use plastic. But as we started looking at the pricing of all the options, we were like, well, let's just see like, what is a plastic bag, like a stand-up pouch, which is like so much of a grocery store. What does that cost? And I got the pricing. I was like, oh my God, if we're going to put this in a glass jar, it's going to cost this much. And if we're going to put it in a bag, it's going to cost like basically like a tenth of the price. And that night I'm going to come to your packaging question, or your question on packaging, I promise. But I had a dream, and I was walking on the beach, and there was this little boy that was playing in the waves. And as I walked up and got close to him, I saw there was something lolling in the waves, and he walked over to it, and he picked it up, and he walked up to me, and he looked at me straight in the eyes, and I realized it was my grandson. And he held up a plastic bag that he picked up out of the ocean, and it said Imlak'esh Organics on it. And it has burned itself into my mind, which is that the decisions we make today are affecting my children in the future and all of our grandchildren to come. And that was like this moment of like, whoa, like no plastic. Like our packaging will not be plastic. Mm-hmm. I can't make 100,000 or 1 million of these, you know, pouches that are just going to end up in a landfill or, God forbid, in the ocean. So we created the Imlak'esh brand, which has now become an iconic aspect of our brand, which is that we package the entire product in a glass jar with a metal lid, with a recycled paper label, and plant-based inks. So you could literally take the whole jar and just throw it in the ocean. Like, don't do it, you know? Like, you could throw the whole thing in the ocean, and it would completely degrade. And that's a huge element of our packaging. So am I embarrassed of our first round of packaging? I'm embarrassed by the label. The label is hilarious. And we actually used to, in the early days, print the labels out in color at Staples, and then Phil Max, he's really nimble with his fingers, would cut the labels out with a paper cutter, and then I would glue stick them on the jars.
Amazing.
And our friends were so supportive of us, and this was such a labor-intensive process, that people would just come and help us, right? And so we literally...
Like almost like they felt bad for you.
Like thousands... Yeah, oh, they definitely felt bad for us. But they were also really excited about what we were doing, right? And so we were glue sticking labels onto like literally thousands of these jars in the early days. So that's, I love it. That's the labor of love that it takes, you know, to really start a business.
Because everyone... Like, here's the thing, and especially in today's age, everyone is so fascinated by when a company hits kind of its moment, right? And it's everywhere, and people are, oh, this is amazing, and like, you got so lucky with this product, and it's out there, and it's like, no one realizes all the things of literally Elmer's glue pasting a label on, you know, like, no one sees those things. And I always joke about like the times when I was like, when I felt like I made it was when I was physically like carrying 30 packages to the UPS store, you know, and like, I'm crushing, and I'm like, now I look back, like, I can imagine loading up my car with, you know, and labeling every package, but it's those things that you learn so much from, but no one ever sees it. Mm-hmm. Very few document it because it's embarrassing. Yeah. But you would like love that now, right? Like you would love to see like you and your friends like pasting on labels on these products and the history of it, you know?
Yeah, and you know, that's like those early moments are kind of like create some of the soul and like the fun experience behind what you do, where you're like at some, you know, market and a bunch of your friends are there helping out, and there's like a big line and people are buying all kinds of stuff, and you work like a 16-hour day and you're exhausted, but you come home with just a big smile on your face because you just know that you love what you do and that other people see what you've created and that they want to be a part of it, right?
Yeah.
And that's like the spark 7 years in that keeps us doing what we're doing, because like running a food company is not easy. I'll tell all of you out there, if you want to make money, don't start a food company. If you want to do something that matters in the world, having a food company is one of the things that can really create a difference. Yeah.
What was the process of you're putting on labels by hand, you're doing all your own packaging, to like, we need to scale this up?
Yeah, you know, so we've been a pretty renegade outfit for a long time. We bootstrapped the company with a really small initial investment, and for 7 years we've been 100% founder-owned, operated, funded, you know, worked with banks to, you know, have debt and be able to grow the business. And part of the reason we want to do that is that we didn't want to erode the integrity of what we were creating and our packaging and our sourcing and all the different elements that we did. And we've grown into kind of a semi-national brand now. We're nationwide distributed in Sprouts, we're in Southern California Whole Foods, we work with natural grocers, we're in New Seasons, and then you can find us online, Amazon, our website, Thrive Market, places like that. So, you know, we've grown into a decent sized company. We're still relatively small. But, you know, that early stage of kind of like expanding from Santa Barbara, you know, into the rest of California, and like feeling that like kind of success of being a regional brand and having so many buyers and stores love our products. We used to do a lot of events and festivals with a food truck. So we had like thousands of people interfacing with our products, and we used to actually make like all these different smoothies and quinoa bowls, and we would put all of our superfoods in them to help people experience how they can use them. So I mean, all I can say is like being a bunch of 20-year-old kids, like I don't think we thought we knew how to do it. We just made a decision that we were like, we're going to try to do this a completely different kind of radical way and be as disruptive to the industry as we can be, and just kind of see how it goes, right? Mm-hmm. And it went really well, and like it still is going really well. But we were like doing all of our own manufacturing. We were literally running, you know, Sprinter vans and Priuses like all over Southern California, doing all of our own deliveries. And at some point we kind of realized like, if you want to actually create disruption and make waves, like you need to get really good at a couple things. And so we really kind of looked back at the essence of what Imlak'esh is all about. Like, why did we start this company? What are we trying to create here? And we recognized that, we didn't start it to like drive trucks or do logistics or, run manufacturing. We did it because we truly believe that we can positively impact farmers and people at origin in huge areas of land, and that we're able to tell stories to people and have them really care about the impact that's having, and to on their own lives, especially on their own health and nutrition and well-being, and also that they know that what they're putting in their body is positively impacting everyone else. And so we made a decision of like, okay, how can we really focus on the things that we're really good at, which is sourcing and storytelling and creating waves in that space, right? So I feel that I've really been working on innovations in packaging, on innovations in product, and really hitting the plant-based movement of having people eat lower on the food chain, and having that really be delightful for people, and then also having paleo and keto be really accessible to people, and then really working on the packaging side of the business to create huge changes in the way that packaging is happening in the industry. So after 7 years, we've been, I guess for about 3 years, we've kind of been banging our heads against the wall trying to figure out how to create a more like accessible, lower price point product, because products that we can put outside of the kind of natural channel, outside of the Whole Foods and the Sprouts and the independent grocery stores. And so we are actually launching in about 2 weeks, sneak peek everyone, a grab and go pouch, and it will be the first plant-based compostable stand-up pouch in our entire category in the industry. And so we've been working on that for years, and our goal isn't to like hang on to that idea that we're the compostable ones and we're the only ones doing this. It's to partner with as many other brands as we possibly can to remove plastic from their supply chains as possible. So that's one of the big disruptors we're creating right now. And I'll be the first one to tell you there's still a lot of challenges with plant-based plastics, and they are compostable, but the whole compostability and the life cycle of it. But we just decided is like, we're gonna just put our money where our mouth is and try somewhere. You gotta start somewhere, right? And you gotta evolve it.
Yeah.
And so those are literally launching in like 2 weeks. So we're really, really excited to see how these foods can reach a much larger audience.
So where are you at now? How many superfoods in the market? How many products?
Yeah, so we have, there's 11 different foods.
Okay.
We do, I'll try to name them all, hopefully I don't stumble here. We do cacao powder, cacao nibs, 100% cacao wafers, and then our nuts, we do sacha inchi seeds, which we haven't talked about much, but that's kind of our superstar, and macambo beans, which we talked quite a bit about. And then we do goji berries, golden berries, and then on the powder side, we do maca powder, spirulina, and sacha inchi protein powder, which is incredible plant-based protein powder.
Okay. So if someone's listening and they want to start incorporating some superfoods, what's the best way to start? What's your entry level? You said you have, what's the gateway?
And then the last one, oh my god, I forget, Charge Boss clusters. So it's kind of the gateway drug to superfoods. It's this cashew cluster with cacao nibs, maca, coconut nectar, and cashew. So it's rolled together in this like delicious, chewy, chewy bite. So if you have like a parent you're trying to get to eat healthier or something, or yourself, it's a great little gateway drug because they're absolutely delicious and they're super energizing.
Well, it was fun. So I had someone describe to me superfoods in a way that I think, because we can talk about it because we talk about nutrients, micro and macro. But for the bottom line is superfoods are the most nutrient dense for the calories and the size of the physical food, right?
Yeah.
There's the most nutrients packed in it. That's what gives them the category of superfood. So if someone's looking to, the whole point of taking in superfoods is just to optimize, get more nutrients, whether you're nutrient deficient, have some ailment. What is the place you would say to start incorporating, and how? Because I know a lot of times, I look at this with diets.
Right.
People are so polarized by diets.
Sure.
You have to be keto, you have to be vegetarian, you have to be, and there's no other way around it.
Sure.
And if you're an American and someone's telling you to be a vegetarian or vegan, you're probably looking around like, great, so
how do I do that?
How do I do it, right? And I I always joke with people, if you want to become a vegetarian, just go to India for 2 weeks. And you will have some of the most unbelievable flavors you have ever experienced in your life.
Yeah.
And if you're in northern India, it's all going to be plant-based.
Yeah.
You know, and so, like, how do you get people who may even think they're healthy, but to start incorporating superfoods to optimize where they're at?
Absolutely.
And so what is that first 1, 2, 3 that you would go to introduce?
Yeah, there's kind of a couple avenues, I would say, and it depends. So it depends on how people are currently living their lives to make sure that they're incorporating these foods in the like easiest way they possibly can. So if you make smoothies in the morning, if you're a person that likes to do that, I would highly recommend just incorporating like maca powder or sachinchi protein powder into the smoothie that you're making. It's just one other thing you need to add. If you're a snacker and you love like eating nuts and you know that like afternoon snack or that morning snack, macambo and sachinchi are really, really great. And they're just like almonds or walnuts or cashews. It's not rocket science to eat them. And then we also have like goji berries and golden berries. So, you know, making little trail mixes. You could even take, you know, sachinchi and just like dump them into an existing trail mix that you eat, right? I mean, sachinchi they're 35% protein, so it's twice as high.
Yeah, let's talk about it because I don't think a lot of people know.
Yeah, it's this little golden seed, and
where's it from?
They're sourced from Thailand.
Oh, they're from Thailand. Okay.
Yeah. So we work with about 1,000 rural farmers in Thailand, a lot of hill tribe communities, which are indigenous people in Thailand. Incredible livelihood project we have going on there for, you know, regenerating land and stopping a lot of like GMO corn that's being grown for pigs and cattle. But the seed is 35% protein, which is twice as high as almonds or cashews. And they have 20 times the omega-3s of salmon. So imagine there's like 20 pounds of salmon sitting in front of you. There's as much omega-3 in this one jar. They also have all 9 essential amino acids, and the fat that's in them is like 369 blend. So it's a really, really healthy fat. And there's 0 net carbs. So from a keto standpoint, really, really good as part of a ketogenic diet. They also produce the highest protein per acre of any food we've ever studied. So it's possible there's something that's higher, but like, and from a sustainability standpoint and talking about like eating more plant-based and, you know, having less impact on the land, I mean, what an incredible food, like all around. And they kind of taste, to me, they kind of taste like a peanut and a macadamia nut had a baby. Okay. You know, really like creamy and fatty, but, you know, has that nice like peanutty flavor to them. So, you know, you can just like snack on those like nuts, and I just think, you know, incorporate all these different foods into my own life, and that's how it all started, right? It's like the experience we had with these foods led us to share them with other people, and then people are like, oh, I'm gonna start using all these different foods. But I mean, you can just take, like, if you eat oatmeal in the morning, take cacao nibs, put it on your oatmeal. Oh, it's so good, right? Yeah. And they're really energizing. And you know, chocolate gets a bad rap because chocolate's full of like tons of sugar and milk. Like most chocolate bars are like between 10 and 30% cacao. But if you start getting above that kind of 70% mark, and we do 100%, it's a really incredibly healthy food. It's really, really antioxidant rich. And it's also super good for your brain health, really energizing. So if you're looking for like an afternoon pick-me-up, if you're getting that like, you know, 2-3 o'clock afternoon slump, you know, eating a handful of cacao nibs or eating the cacao wafers is a great way to start.
My favorite, like, and we talked about this because intermittent fasting, but my favorite thing is I can do overnight oats, which I don't do overnight. I just make them in the morning. Yeah. And it'll be oats and cacao nibs, goji berries, and then cashew butter. Wow. And then a little bit of maca. And it's like the best thing because you get that sweet, and actually when you soak the goji berries, they distribute that kind of sweetness throughout. Yeah. It doesn't create like a syrup, but it does like have some residual sweetness to it. Easy way to start your day and kick off with some superfoods.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that like these foods are really accessible, and not to think of them as this like exotic thing that's over here, but something that, you know, they're dried fruits, they're nuts, they're powders. So just find that place in your life that feels like the easiest place to incorporate, whether you're, you know, a snacker or a smoothie maker, or you really love salads, you can incorporate a lot of these foods into those items. I love to crumble macambo on soup.
Can we have some?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've never had macambo.
All right, here we go.
Right.
I'm gonna crack open the jar.
Okay, so they look like little brains, basically.
Yeah.
Like flattened brains. I don't know. Are we zoomed in on this?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we call them the brain bean of the Amazon, right?
Okay.
And in traditional medicine, the Amazon, they use them for neurological health.
Okay.
People that are like post-stroke, depression, all different types of stuff, but they're full of all these tryptophan and serotonin chemicals that actually like trigger positive reactions in the brain.
I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe it.
I've got my version, but I'm interested in yours.
So it's like sunflower. It's like a giant sunflower seed that is that breaks up a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they kind of have like a bacony, buttery flavor to
Yep.
them.
Yep. And these aren't salted or anything.
They're lightly salted,
Salted,
but nothing
okay.
else.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really good.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
They're one of the most, actually probably the most filling food I've ever eaten. If you eat like 8 or 10 of them, it's like
You're done.
almost a full meal replacement. And they're super high in fiber, so just eat like 10 of them and a big glass of water.
All right. And then this is the cacao wafers.
That's 100%.
By the way, I'm just doing this selfishly because I'm starving. Okay.
Go to town. All the jars are for you. So.
All right. So this is 100% cacao.
So you told me earlier you like 88% is
I'm an
what you go.
88% fan.
Yeah.
Because it's still every 100% I have tastes like dirt. It doesn't taste like dirt, but breaks up in your mouth like dirt.
Yeah.
It doesn't melt.
Right.
And so to me, the 88 is like that perfect of like extremely low sugar.
Yeah.
It's about as pure as you can get with still melting. But you're telling me this is gonna melt.
Yeah, it'll melt. It's 100% and it'll melt. I think with the 100%, it's actually one of our best-selling products. Like everybody loves them, and some people feel like, oh my god, what do I do with 100%? Well, you can bake with it. Mm-hmm. You can put it in your smoothie. A lot of people drop them in their coffee.
Okay.
Right, so they just take one, and it just melts in the coffee, and you kind of get this mocha flavor to your coffee. Or making your own hot chocolate. So if you take like 10 of the wafers. Yep. Put them in a blender with hot water. Okay. A little bit of whatever sweetener you want, honey or and then a little bit of salt. That's it. So just wafers, hot water, honey, salt. Best cup of hot chocolate you've ever had. You don't need any milk. You don't need any creamer.
It's pretty crazy. This doesn't taste like 100%.
Yeah.
The other thing too, if anyone's listening and you like chocolate with wine, the lower your cacao is. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this. Yeah. So technically, the more sugar in your chocolate, right? Mm-hmm. It affects the wine in not the best way. Right. So the sugar will actually make the wine taste more bitter. But if you incorporate a bitter, so if you have like above 75%, you'll bring out more of the fruit notes in the wine because you're able to identify them because your body's basically masked by a bitterness. Yeah. The bitterness is masked and then the fruit starts to come forward.
Amazing. Wow, that's really interesting.
So the 100 will actually make wine in general, like you'll start noticing more of the fruit aromas and flavors.
Wow. And you used to work in the wine world, right? So you know quite a bit about
but it's
wine.
all like personal. I love wine and chocolate.
Yeah.
I just think it's a perfect pairing. Where people get in trouble is when they have a really sweet chocolate. Mm-hmm. It'll just kill the wine.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
This is dangerous.
Yeah,
because here's the other crazy thing, which no one talks about, is cacao has no sugar. Right. So if you have a sweet tooth and you like the flavor of cacao, you just munch on this all day and you're not having any sugar.
Absolutely. And cacao is also an appetite suppressant, right? It's super antioxidant rich. It's an appetite suppressant, so it's really good. There's a lot of studies that cacao is actually really good for your heart health, and it's good for digestion and appetite suppressant. So I'm really excited because we're basically announcing on this podcast, we're launching a new product, which is going to be a keto cacao wafer. So it's actually a 70% keto wafer. There's no sugar in it at all. It's actually sweetened with monk fruit. And it's going to be the first organic keto chocolate product that's available anywhere in the United States. And so it's all using monk fruit and actually tastes like 70%. It's really like sweet and delicious. So they'll be available in a couple weeks. Okay. And part of it is that, right, we have this jar, which is really, you can eat these on the go and put them in your coffee. A lot of people like leave them people tell me they leave them in their desk drawer at work and then they eat them for like a good little pick-me-up. But the keto wafers, they're going to be in the compostable stand-up pouch, so it's a great like, grab and go on the go item where you're going to have this delicious kind of 70% cacao in these little discs. But it'll be like way more accessible for on the go.
So let's talk about, because you talked about monk fruit, so let's talk about sweeteners.
Sure.
So natural sweeteners,
the
two most common, stevia and monk fruit.
Yep.
Why monk fruit over, if people are used to seeing stevia or stevia?
Right. If I can just be honest, my palate just doesn't really like stevia, and I think a lot of some people either love or hate stevia, right? And monk fruit, I've actually been formulating with monk fruit for years because I do formulation for other companies because of my background in nutrition and sourcing and everything like that. And monk fruit is just so much more neutral. I think it's also just way better for you. It comes from a fruit which is called a monk fruit, but basically you just extract the actual compound in it that creates that sensation of sweetness, like that non-nutritive sweetener, and it's much more kind of neutral on the palate. If it's done right, it doesn't leave an aftertaste, and so it was quite a fun process. It's been a lot of nights between like 11 p.m. and 3 in the morning in the kitchen getting like kind of way too high on chocolate and not being able to sleep, figuring out how to make this keto wafer. But we've been able to do it in such a way that it really, you can't tell. Like, I love giving it to people because I've been sampling it out. And people are like, wow, it's really good chocolate. I'm like, yep, there's no sugar in that.
That's awesome.
So I just think that the potential for sourcing behind monk fruit and the growing of it, and then also just the way that it tastes and its non-nutrition profile, I guess, really lends itself well.
And when you're looking at these new products, are you looking at it as, okay, this is what the market's demanding or a void in the market? Or is it more of, we just came across this in the jungle, or we just found out this new, or this combination of these two things, we just think it's cool and want to put it out there? What's kind of the process of launching these new?
Yeah, that's a great question. So
I'm just going to keep eating, by the way.
Yeah, go to town. I like to say that we are a purpose that found a product. We're not a product that's like trying to find a purpose in the world. And so a lot of times it is, and I think historically has really been, wow, look at this incredible food or this incredible opportunity to create innovation and disruption around something that we're doing. Like, we just created the first regeneratively farmed cacao in the industry, and that was actually Expo West last year. We launched that cacao from Ecuador, which I don't know if you can taste it. It's like, it's 100%, but it's not even that bitter, right? It has all this incredible flavor. So, I think the other piece is, to answer your question, is that does happen where, like, I got some other tricks in my back pocket. Stay tuned in the next 12 to 18 months. We're going to be launching some new nuts and seeds that nobody has likely ever heard of, which I'm really excited about doing. And then there is a place of like, how do we, we're moving into a place of like, how do we create really accessible, grab and go, snack friendly, kind of active lifestyle items for people that are hiking, backpacking, triathletes, busy moms just running around trying to, make sure that their kids and they have, all the right things to keep them going. So, the keto wafer was kind of born from that, but it's like we created 100% organic, sugar-free, product that is going to kind of satisfy that chocolate craving for people, and that everything about the product is actually for their nutrition, for energy level, and then on the sourcing side, it's doing incredible work at Origin.
Yeah.
So,
and by the way, it tastes really good, which is the challenge, right? That most people faced, and that is, all right, we can find the nutrients, we can do what we can, but how do you make it fit a palate that's craving certain things, right?
Yeah,
that's trained to.
So it's a both and, really.
Yeah. So so you got these new packages coming out. What are you most excited about when you look at kind of the industry of superfoods and things you're coming out with? Is it discovering those new, like, unknown fruits and nuts, or is it just expanding what you've got, getting into more people? What's getting you up every morning where you're like really excited about?
I think most entrepreneurs, and me included, like, we are like spurred on by innovation and what's new, and it's like closing your eyes and imagining what's possible, and then seeing if you can actually create it in reality, like create it in a product or create it in a service or create it in an app. And so for us, it's a product, right? And so this new Grab and Go has been really exciting because, you know, we're planning on launching it into like convenience stores and into like corporate campuses for pantries, you know, on tech campuses and in places around the world. So creating that accessibility, and, you know, the reality is that most people have still never tried a lot of these foods. Like even goji berries, which is probably like one of the more like famous, well-known superfoods, a lot of people have never tried them, right? So for us, you know, our you know, tagline is superfoods for the people, and what we're really trying to do is make these foods accessible to anyone and everyone, not just people that are shopping at natural food stores or at co-ops, but to everybody. And so that expansion of like, we have a huge health crisis in this country, right? And so if we can just be a small part of having people eat a better diet and have the diet they choose to eat positively impact everything else that's going on in the world, that's what gets me going. And that we also do have this like incredible innovation pipeline happening as well, in terms of bringing new things to market and adding other flavored products and nuts and seeds in the grab and go size. So yeah, it's a really exciting time, and I know we're at this inflection point where we've built this incredible foundation that now we're ready to just like scale and go big. And I feel like we're going to be capable of doing that while maintaining the integrity and kind of ethos of the brand, because we spent 7 years slowly building this thing to the place, like building a really strong foundation to then be able to scale it, but do it in a way that still matches our values.
I love it. Is there any piece of advice you would leave someone who's, I guess, looking to, you followed a passion.
Yeah.
Right. So you followed a passion that led you to the rainforest that then led you to design this company, right?
Yeah.
Is there any advice you'd give to people that either have an idea, they're thinking about something, or something they're really into but looking to turn it into a business? Do you say, looking back on everything?
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of advice and had the, you know, again, the privilege of getting to sit at the feet of a lot of really wise people. So I don't know if I have a whole lot of advice to offer.
Well, let's be honest. Most knowledge is passed on, right? And just added on to past, you know.
You know, I think the biggest piece of advice I would say is like, find something that you're deeply passionate about that just like is naturally just coming, like it like needs to come out of you, and then take big risks. You know, you can take calculated risks, but you have to take big risks. And that starting a company, it requires like more than 100% of your time, energy, and attention than you think you can give it. But you have to take big risks in order to make it happen.
Okay, I like it. I think that's a perfect place to end on. Is there, let's do one more fun fact. Of any of your superfoods, what's one fun fact that you think people don't know about, whether it's maca, whether it's cacao, fun fact about a nutrient that you think is super interesting and beneficial?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Fun fact. Spirulina. We source the only organic spirulina from South America. Most spirulina is grown in China, and spirulina actually can pull heavy metals and neurotoxins and like bad pesticides out of your body, but also the environment that it's grown in can accumulate those things. So it's really important, the spirulina that you eat, which is this blue-green algae, it's really high in protein. It's all about where it comes from, and then it's really clean because it can actually be incredibly detoxifying to the body.
I love it.
Yeah.
How can people find you, find Imlak'esh?
Yeah, we are on Instagram at Imlak'esh. That's IMLAKESH, and Imlak'eshOrganics.com. And we will be at some festivals throughout California this summer as well, if you're a Californian. And I think those are probably the best ways to find us.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.